Hey, I'm Micah Lowinger, co-host of On the Media, a podcast and nationally syndicated public radio show. After Trump's win last November, there was a ton of discourse about how the manosphere helped Trump win over young male voters and other people who had ditched traditional media. To even the playing field, the thinking went, the left needed to cultivate its own Joe Rogan. Hassan Piker, the hugely popular Twitch streamer, was heralded as that guy, and he was the talk of the town in venues like The New Yorker and elsewhere. But all that attention on Piker may have distracted from another growing cohort of left-wing online personalities, like progressive content creator Brian Tyler Cohen, who posted his first YouTube video in 2018.
Trump just told the single most outrageous lie of his presidency at a campaign rally. And I realize the gravity of what I just said, that he's told over 5,000 lies during his time in office. But this lie, this took the cake.
I spoke to him for On the Media last week.
I just tried to break things down as simply as I could. I tried to make them as accessible as possible. I don't have a background in D.C., so if I'm going to be able to understand it, then it has to be dumbed down enough that somebody who had never even stepped foot in Washington could actually figure out what the hell was going on.
In 2023, Cohen landed a gig at MSNBC as a contributor.
A YouTube star, one of the best communicators out there.
But just a little over a year into the job,
it felt a little bit like I was going backwards. This idea that I would go from having millions of subscribers on YouTube to a legacy media outlet where, look, there are some shows where it's just a few 100,000 viewers per episode.
And then last October, Cohen quit MSNBC, returning to YouTube full time. Today, he has 4.3 million subscribers. According to a study from Pew Research Center last fall, around 1 in 5 Americans now get their news from influencers, about 20% of the population. Cohen says that the Democrats, the party, and all the politicians have neglected the independent media landscape for as long as it's existed.
They always just viewed legacy media as our message distribution system. Why would we spend time validating content creators on the left when we've got Anderson Cooper and Rachel Maddow?
Meanwhile, billionaires like Ferris and Dan Wilkes have poured millions of dollars into outlets like PragerU and the Daily Wire, which helped conservative pundits like Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens reach ginormous audiences.
I do think that it's incumbent on folks who do care about democracy to start investing in building up content creation on the left.
Like Brian Tyler Cohen, YouTuber David Pakman has also cultivated an audience of millions on the platform with his progressive politics. Whereas Cohen's videos are pretty polished, he's always wearing a suit, Pakman is much more casual, and Pakman's politics have attracted the attention of right-wing commentators like Candace Owens.
David Pakman does not have a soul. He doesn't have a soul.
When I spoke to him this week, Pakman told me there's a growing community of like-minded liberal YouTubers now. He mentioned Brian Tyler Cohen, but there's also Midas Touch, Luke Beasley, Adam Mockler, Jesse Dollimer, and Brittany Page, among others. I asked him if this cohort has a name.
No.
For YouTubers, you guys are really not taking advantage of this branding opportunity. It's a little surprising.
You're probably right. I mean, listen, if it were the right, they would have figured out a great name already and had 3 funders for it, and probably 2 conferences.
And do you guys have like a literal group chat?
No, we don't.
Okay. You know better than anyone that you are very outgunned by the right-wing internet, by right-wing YouTubers, podcasters, content creators, influencers, whatever you want to call them. In March, Media Matters released a report comparing the digital reach of right-wing and left-wing content creators. I'm sure you saw the graphic that I'm talking about. How would you explain how we got to this moment where it feels like conservative voices won the internet?
This is a very long historical trajectory. And it really starts actually with a book I have behind me that's out of print, which I'll grab here and show you. This book, Waves of Rancor, by Hilliard and Keith. I don't even know what year this is from. This book sort of starts to tell the story of low-power radio and the ways in which right-wing religious broadcasters started getting these broadcast licenses on low-power FM as well as AM radio. This sounds very distant from the Daily Wire and Charlie Kirk, but it is kind of part of a trajectory where they had first mover advantage to a great degree, and also they had financial investment to a great degree. For all of the wild claims about George Soros, this and that, the truth is we don't really have the funders on our side. I think on the political left, there is money. It disproportionately floats directly to candidates, sometimes to third-party groups of different kinds, but there's not really been a movement to fund what we do the way that the right has done it. So I think that that's one layer to it. Another layer also is that the right is way better at taking over the non-overtly political spaces. And so if you flip around a lot of the social media apps and you find content about being a better car salesperson, or you find content about doing real estate wholesaling or workout content, a lot of it is coded, C-O-D-E-D. It's coded with, it's red coded is what I call it, or kind of with right-wing ideology. And this includes a lot of the shows that Trump and Vance really successfully used last year, like the Nelk Boys and others, where he's appearing in an unstructured format, he's hanging out, he's weighing in on not all political topics. The left is getting crushed as far as that goes, and I think that that's another layer to it.
And you believe that there's a kind of algorithmic bias towards some of the red-coded content, or at least there's some kind of affinity between the types of messages that the right puts out and what social media likes?
I think that to a degree, there's all of the above, what you're talking about. There are a lot of right-wing ideas that, to their credit, lend themselves way more to that type of algorithm. I'll just give you one example. If we just think about the issue of abortion, right? The idea that killing is bad, abortion is killing, it should be illegal. It took me 3 seconds to tell you that. There's no equivalent opposite on the political left. It's not, we love abortions, the more the better, right? We're trying to find a conversation here about bodily autonomy, about medicine and science, about the law. And we're already lost. It's taken me 20 seconds just to give you the framework under which we would have that conversation. So I think that algorithmically, a lot of these ideas do lend themselves to the way the right frames the issue.
That's a good example. Can you give me some others?
Tax relief is another one. Like, it's your money, you should get to keep it. On the left, we don't say you should have as little of your money as possible, right? We're saying, listen, if we understand sociology and anthropology and political science, we know that when we get beyond Dunbar's number of groups of 150 people, certain aspects of what we do have to be centralized, and you can use the word coercive for taxes, but it's a form of necessary coercion. We've lost, right? I mean, it's a different format. And I don't say we've lost in terms of we have the wrong idea. What I'm saying is it doesn't lend itself to TikTok.
Yeah, but okay. I mean, if we wanted to get spicy, I mean, it's not so hard to translate some of these left-wing positions into quick hit emotional messages. On the abortion one, you could say Republicans don't respect women and they want to dominate them. On tax relief, if you were a certain kind of Democrat, you could say government helps people and protects us from, craven criminals and billionaires. I don't know, right?
No, you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And listen, I also am trying to work within the system. And so on taxes, one of the things I've been saying is we want taxes as low as possible while funding the areas of absolute importance to have a functioning liberal democracy, right? And I'm even kind of hesitating as I tell you because I'm trying to figure out, but you're not wrong that the left can do better on this stuff, but it takes a little more thinking to do it.
Yeah, but what you're getting at is that you, even understanding what has helped the right create or capture these platforms and algorithms, you're not willing to play by the exact same rules because you approach your content differently. Is that fair to say?
Yes, and also, there's a big discussion that takes place among our cohort, not internally, but in terms of the feedback we get. You guys are resorting to the same types of YouTube titles. It's the clickbait titles and so on and so forth. And I've been super upfront with my audience. Listen, we are trying to get an audience for the content we're doing because we believe the message we're putting out is better for the country. Given that, of course, I'm going to choose titles that I think will get a bigger audience rather than a smaller one. I'll give you an example. If I spend 7 minutes talking about Caroline Leavitt's latest press conference, I could title it, White House Official Answers Questions from the Press. I could give it that title. That's going to get very few views. And so instead, I go, Caroline Leavitt tells a lie a minute in unhinged rant. I don't believe it's inaccurate, right? If I were to title it, Caroline Leavitt rushed off stage in a stretcher, it's obviously not in the video. That's a problem if that's the title I'm picking. But editorializing and sort of playing the formats for the different platforms, I think that it's inevitable that you just have to do that.
Yeah, you did recently Charlie Kirk, and then all caps, brutally debunked, comma, wrong about all caps, everything.
That's the game on YouTube. You can exit the algorithmic space and just get my hour podcast where there's no such titles. It's just an hour show. And so the idea here is we're trying to garner the largest audience possible while playing within the rules and not being, dishonest in an overt way like that.
What else do you think these right-wing creators are doing that others on the left just haven't kind of caught up to or figured out yet?
I think the cross-pollination among the shows and with elected officials in the Republican Party has been executed really well. Our history with booking elected officials from the Democratic Party is weeks of emails, multiple phone calls, extremely risk-averse in terms of what exactly do you want to ask about. We can offer you 9 minutes on Friday morning and don't go over by even 30 seconds or we'll interrupt. An extremely hands-on in a negative sense, and also generally preferential to legacy and corporate media. One of the things that happens on the right is, J.D. Vance did the rounds on all of the shows. Trump did the rounds on all of the shows. There's a much more sort of working relationship where audiences see these folks as people they want to hear from rather than someone who shows up to give me kind of anodyne talking points. And I think that has to be part of the community as well. It can't just be the content creators. It also has to be the lawmakers. I think that's another aspect that they've really mastered on the right.
Yeah, it's interesting. When they kind of put you through the ringer like this, do you think it's that they didn't trust you? Is that they were like, who is this guy?
To a degree, there's a couple things going on. One was the Democratic Party, more than the Republican Party, was much more deferential to corporate media. That's number one. Number two, obviously it gets easier to book people the bigger you get. Now I have over 6 million followers across all my platforms. It's much easier to book people when you have those numbers. There's no doubt. So it's not just that they've started to change. This is also a bigger show than it used to be. But since the election, we're hearing from way more elected officials. They are, we now kind of just don't do the ringer. I just say, listen, my political record is an open book. I've got thousands and thousands of videos, tens of thousands of videos. Give me 20 minutes, give me a half hour. If the interview's 10 days from now, I can't tell you what the topics will be because they're going to be topical based on what's going on. You can see what the interviews will be like. And if that sounds good, let's do it. And they've been significantly more receptive to that. So if there's anything right now that gives me cautious optimism, it's that.
You went to the White House after the election while Joe Biden was still in office. What did you tell him?
It was in a group setting. So I didn't tell, you don't tell the president stuff per se. I think I would kind of challenge that language. And basically the topic was, we lost. It didn't go the way we wanted it to go. Going forward for the next election cycles, what do you think about how we should be engaging with creators like you? And I said what I just told you, which is, listen, let some of the elected officials just appear, let their personalities come through, let them become known entities, be less risk averse, be less hands-on, just kind of make it easier to engage in these conversations rather than on October 15th figuring out whose show can we appear on with only 2 weeks left before an election. That we know doesn't work. So that was kind of my main message.
And do you feel that Democrats have taken some of these suggestions to heart? Like, have you noticed a difference?
We're having way more lawmakers appear, and we are not getting the sort of feeling of concern as to what might you ask. There's a little more, the boss can handle questions. Let's let the boss go and do his or her thing, rather than wanting to talk to me 2 or 3 times before an interview. So I'm seeing as a change. The frequency with which some folks are willing to appear, I think, is also a change. As we approach the 26 midterms, I think we're going to have a better sense of, is there a different approach here to independent media?
One of the narratives after the election, obviously, is all about Joe Rogan. She should have gone on it. He laid out the red carpet for Elon Musk and Trump and J.D. Vance. Positively or negatively, a lot of people ascribe a lot of agency to Joe Rogan. Do you think he deserves so much importance in that conversation?
I think the Rogan story represents a lot of the issues, but I don't know that Rogan is a main character in and of himself in the way that some people are saying the left needs a Joe Rogan. So I'll say a couple of things about this. One is, the right is much more interested in a sole and singular leader than the left. And you might remember when Donald Trump and others would say, this was in 2020, this was also in 24 when Biden was still the nominee. There's no way people support Biden because you never see Biden hats. You never see Biden stickers. You don't see people putting a Biden flag on their boat. This is sort of the phraseology and imagery that is very relevant to the right. My experience with the left is that we are less concerned with having a leader and sort of deifying that individual. Now, I think Obama was generationally unique in the way that he inspired people, and there was a little more of a personal interest in Obama. But the way I viewed Biden was election day. What's my better option? Here it is. I have no bumper stickers. I have no boat, never mind a flag on my boat, etc. Now I go back to work. And I think that's the view of a lot of folks on the left. So to the extent that the left needs a Rogan, I think that narrative is wrong. What I thought was useful about the Rogan critique, though, was doing more of those shows and appearing in more of those unstructured environments could only have helped her, unless you believe she quite literally couldn't handle those situations, which is not my impression right now.
Democrats are quite critical of their own candidates, and there is some risk in putting Kamala Harris or whatever politician in front of somebody who could reflect poorly on them, who might have a big audience but has baggage.
There has to be an expansion of getting in front of blue-coded non-political audiences. And this is something that with our cohort, we do talk about a lot, which is we have a pretty significantly low ceiling in the sense that a lot of the country does not watch overtly political content. They don't listen to overtly political podcasts. They don't watch overtly political YouTube channels. And so as much as we grow, we will be restricted by the fact that we are in an overtly political content space. And so there has to be some expansion to blue-coded spaces. The right has been far more inclusive than the left, and the left has done, in my view, too much purity testing, and the way it often shakes out. And remember, once they're in power, this goes out the window. This is to win elections. With the right, if they find someone who's a lifelong Democratic voter, loves 98% of what the Democratic Party is offering, but has some area where they're like, I don't know about this thing, for the purposes of getting a vote and getting the votes of the followers of that person, they welcome them in. They go, come on in. Absolutely. Let's work on that together, which we agree about. On the left, sometimes the instinct is different. And it's, even if we agree 92% of the time, this 8% is so much of a concern that I don't even really think you're part of the movement I'm a part of. And that is exclusionary.
What's a sticking point issue that you're thinking of?
I mean, recently on Israel-Palestine, I've seen, my view, which encapsulated is I favor a two-state solution. Palestinians should have an autonomous state. I want the blockade lifted. Israel's settlements are going to have to go. Netanyahu is not going to be an arbiter to peace. But if you're calling for the elimination of Israel, I'm not with you, right? I've been told you're on the right. You're not part of this movement. You're part of something different.
I guess, what are some other risks you think Democrats could be making to kind of build a more modern, more expansive online media strategy?
I actually do think that there are Democratic elected officials now doing some of the things that a year ago I would have said they should be doing. There are senators now who are doing direct-to-camera videos on the social platforms. They're getting huge views because voters actually like just hearing from them in a less structured sort of format. I think that's a good thing. But
Who?
Adam Schiff is doing it, and he's doing it quite well, as an example. Cory Booker also has been doing it. Ro Khanna is doing more of it as well. There's a growing list. I'm certainly not including everybody here. The rallies that AOC and Bernie are doing, the real crowd sizes. John Ossoff has done some interesting events in Georgia. There's a lot of folks. Greg Kassar, who I've interviewed a couple of times, is doing some interesting town halls in redder areas. And the interest in that and the turnout is also, together with the other things, making me sort of cautiously optimistic. But to be honest, it's so early. It would be very much beyond where we are for me to make any kind of prediction as to what effect this is going to have.
David, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
David Pakman's new book is The Echo Machine: How Right-Wing Extremism Created a Post-Truth America. I'm Michael Lowinger, co-host of On the Media, where we cast a critical eye on how the news is reported and how the attention economy is transforming journalism. Give us a follow on Instagram, TikTok, and Blue Sky. And while you're at it, please subscribe to On the Media on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.